Hi guys, this is Seth. Welcome to Warthog Defense. Ukraine is expanding one of the most strategically important campaigns of the war. And it's now hitting Russia where it hurts the most, its energy backbone. Over the last year, waves of long-range drones have struck deep inside the Russian territory, targeting oil terminals, refineries, and critical logistic hubs that sustain both the military and the economy. The most dramatic strike came at Primorsk oil terminal, Russia's largest Baltic export hub, where Ukrainian drones ignited massive fires and disrupted operation at a facility that handles huge volumes of crude daily. At the same time, other strikes hit key infrastructure across southern and central Russia, including pumping stations and refineries, continuing a pattern that has been intensifying throughout March. This is not random targeting. Ukraine is systematically degrading Russia's ability to export energy, finance the war, and maintain stable fuel supplies for its forces. Every burning storage tank, every damaged refinery, and every disrupted shipment adds pressure to an already strained system. The goal is clear: turn Russia's energy advantage into a vulnerability and stretch its defensive resources across vast territory. And the timing is critical. These strikes come as global energy markets are already under pressure from the growing crisis in the Middle East, amplifying their impact far beyond the battlefield. But that same crisis has just taken an unexpected turn. After days of escalating threats, President Donald Trump has stepped back from immediate strikes on Iranian power plants, announcing a short delay following what he described as productive contacts. The move triggered an immediate reaction. Oil prices dropped and markets stabilized, signaling how close the situation had come to a major escalation. Iran, however, is not backing down. Tehran continues to warn that any attack on its energy infrastructure will trigger massive retaliation across the region, targeting oil, gas, and even water systems. The message is clear: any strike will not stay limited. What this creates is a dangerous intersection of two conflicts. Ukraine is weakening Russia's energy power from within, while in the Middle East, the threat of a much larger energy war still looms. And for now, both fronts remain one decision away from a much wider escalation. Everyone who wanna support the channel, guys, you have the links in the description. There's Patreon and PayPal link, and stay strong.
Ukraine is systematically expanding its campaign against Russia's energy infrastructure, targeting oil terminals, refineries, storage depots, and power nodes deep inside Russian territory. What was once a limited strike pattern has evolved into a sustained operational strategy designed to disrupt fuel logistics, reduce export capacity, and impose constant pressure on Russia's industrial backbone. The most significant udar came in Russia's Leningrad region, where a mass Ukrainian drone attack struck the Primorsk oil terminal, the country's largest Baltic oil export hub. The strike ignited fuel storage tanks, triggering a major fire that was confirmed by local authorities and detected by satellite-based monitoring systems. Russian sources described a large-scale assault involving dozens of drones, with claims that more than 50 UAVs were shot down across the region. Even with these interceptions, enough drones penetrated defenses to hit critical infrastructure, underlining the growing sophistication and saturation tactics of Ukraine's long-range strike capabilities. Further east, the reach of these operations is becoming increasingly evident. In Ufa, located roughly 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine, a fire erupted near a major oil refinery. Residents reported bursts of gunfire and multiple explosions across the industrial zone, suggesting air defense engagement followed by successful impacts. The geographic distance alone highlights a key shift in the war. Ukraine is no longer limited to frontline or near-border targets, but is now capable of threatening strategic assets deep inside Russia's interior. At the Saratov oil refinery, the situation remains critical. Emergency services have been struggling for a second consecutive day to contain a large fire triggered by a Ukrainian drone strike. Satellite imagery reveals the scale of the response, with approximately a dozen specialized firefighting units deployed to the site. Despite these efforts, heat signatures detected by monitoring satellites as of midday on March 22nd indicate that the blaze is still not fully under control. This suggests significant structural damage and the possibility of prolonged disruption to refinery operations. The Saratov strike was carried out overnight on March 21st by Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, targeting key facilities within the refinery complex. The operation involved multiple specialized units, including the 1st Separate Center, the 414th Birds of Magyar Brigade, and the 413th Raid Regiment, working in coordination with other elements of Ukraine's defense forces. The level of coordination points to a maturing strike doctrine, where intelligence, drone swarms, and precision targeting are combined to maximize damage against high-value infrastructure. This is not an isolated case. Earlier, on March 16th, a Ukrainian drone strike hit the Lubinsk oil depot in Russia's Krasnodar region, destroying or damaging at least 18 storage tanks and reportedly knocking out around 70% of the facility's capacity. Such strikes are particularly impactful because storage depots act as buffers in the energy supply chain. When they are eliminated, the entire distribution system becomes more fragile and less able to absorb disruptions. Beyond oil infrastructure, Ukraine is also targeting supporting energy nodes. In occupied Yakimivka in the Zaporizhzhia region, local reports indicate that Ukrainian drones struck a substation, pointing to a broader strategy that includes electrical infrastructure. Disabling substations can have cascading effects, disrupting industrial operations, logistics hubs, and even military facilities that depend on stable power supply. Taken together, these strikes represent a deliberate campaign aimed at eroding Russia's energy resilience. By hitting export terminals like Primorsk, Ukraine threatens revenue streams. By targeting refineries such as Saratov and Ufa, it disrupts fuel production. By destroying storage depots like Labinsk, it limits distribution flexibility. And by striking substations, it undermines the entire energy ecosystem that supports both civilian industry and military operations. The cumulative effect is not immediate collapse, but gradual degradation. Fires that burn for days, facilities operating below capacity, and repeated strikes forcing constant repairs all contribute to a slow but persistent weakening of Russia's ability to sustain both its war effort and its economic stability. As Ukraine continues to refine its long-range strike capabilities, the pressure on Russian energy infrastructure is likely to intensify, turning the energy sector into one of the central battlefields of the war. Ukrainian forces are beginning to reverse the dynamic on the Dobropilya axis, turning what was once a dangerous Russian breakthrough zone into an area of renewed Ukrainian pressure and localized gains. The latest reports of Ukrainian units entering Novoshakhov and clearing the settlement fit into a broader pattern that has been developing over recent weeks, a steady push to dismantle Russian forward positions and destabilize their offensive structure in this sector. The area east of Dobropilya, including Shakhov and surrounding villages like Novoshakhov, has long been a focal point of Russian assaults. Earlier in the campaign, Russian forces concentrated repeated attacks here, attempting to widen a salient and push toward key logistics hubs deeper in Donetsk. What is now unfolding suggests that Ukraine is exploiting the overstretch created by those earlier offensives. The reported raid by a Ukrainian T-64BV tank from the Rubizh Brigade highlights a shift in tempo. Instead of purely defensive actions, Ukrainian units are conducting aggressive localized penetrations, striking Russian infantry positions inside settlements and then rapidly moving through them. This kind of maneuver warfare indicates improved confidence and coordination at the tactical level, especially in areas that were previously contested or under constant pressure. These actions are not happening in isolation. In early March, Ukrainian forces liberated multiple settlements along the broader southeastern front, pushing Russian troops out of fortified positions and disrupting their supply routes. This wider momentum is now translating into gains on the Dobropilya axis, where Ukrainian units appear to be reclaiming initiative village by village. What makes the current situation particularly significant is the context. Just months ago, this same axis was considered one of the most dangerous sectors for Ukraine. During the 2025 offensive, Russian forces managed to penetrate defensive lines, briefly capturing multiple settlements and threatening to split Ukrainian defenses. However, those gains were ultimately reversed after Ukraine deployed elite units and stabilized the front. Now, the situation appears to be flipping again. Ukrainian advances into places like Novoshakhov suggest that Russian forward elements are no longer able to hold their extended positions effectively. Reports of heavy Russian losses over the past week reinforce this picture. According to Ukrainian leadership, Russia intensified attacks under cover of poor weather conditions, but paid a high price in manpower without achieving meaningful breakthroughs. Equally telling are claims that Russian command structures are under strain. Reports that higher command only recently clarified the true positions of their own units, combined with the replacement of brigade commanders accused of providing false reports, point to systemic issues in coordination and situational awareness. These problems have been noted before in this sector, where earlier Russian advances were partly enabled by confusion and gaps in Ukrainian defenses, but now appear to be affecting Russian forces themselves. From an operational perspective, the Dobropilya axis remains strategically important because it connects to the larger battle for Pokrovsk and the wider Donetsk front. Ukrainian pressure here serves a dual purpose, reclaiming territory while also forcing Russian forces to divert reserves and attention away from other critical directions. The emerging pattern suggests a gradual Ukrainian effort to compress and destabilize the Russian salient rather than achieve a rapid breakthrough. Small-scale assaults, armored raids, and targeted clearing operations are being used to chip away at Russian positions, degrade their cohesion, and force continuous defensive reactions. If this trend continues, the fighting around Novshakov could mark the beginning of a broader rollback of Russian gains in this sector. Rather than a dramatic collapse, the battlefield is shifting through incremental but meaningful advances, where each village retaken further weakens the overall Russian position and tightens Ukrainian control over the axis. Russian sources say that Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, under the command of Robert Magyar Brovdy, have made significant strides in UAV production and deployment technology. Russian soldiers are facing slaughter like cattle as a result. Andrei Medvedev writes, "We've been reporting since the fall that the Ukrainian armed forces and Ukrainian drone manufacturers have made significant strides in UAV production and deployment technology. Footage of a single Russian soldier being killed by 10 to 20 drones has unfortunately been appearing regularly on the Ukrainian segment of Telegram. The enemy has built a highly effective system of interaction between drone manufacturers, government customers, and the military. The Brave One military marketplace has reduced reporting and bureaucratic paperwork to a minimum." Chris O_wiki. Many didn't take the appointment of Robert Magyar Brovdy as UAV commander seriously. So what if he's a businessman, he didn't graduate from a military academy, and he's just a suit? What does he know about military affairs? However, we can now say with certainty that the increased effectiveness of the Ukrainian armed forces' UAV forces is also the result of the work of this dangerous and highly professional enemy. And the shutdown of Starlink has certainly reduced the effectiveness of our military units. The Ukrainian armed forces do have major personnel shortages, but they're solving this problem with UAVs. A stronghold is held by a few forcibly mobilized soldiers, and cover is provided by drones controlling the battlefield. I'm certain the enemy's future strategy will be aimed at improving the quality of drones, using AI-powered swarms controlled by a single pilot. And this will happen within a year, or even less. Pretending there's no problem, that we don't need to work on anything, is certainly possible. We can continue to talk about our complete superiority in drones. However, I don't think that's necessary. Then again, I'm not a professional. RT's military correspondent Alexander Karchenko agrees and comments, "The enemy's frontline drones are incredibly effective. This is achieved through the use of more expensive components. The Ukrainians spare no expense on drones. Furthermore, repeaters on drones are commonplace for the enemy. You can argue with me, but the objective monitoring footage speaks for itself. The enemy used radio drones to hunt the Ka-52 crew in a network of trenches. The drone's signal never dropped, allowing the enemy to strike and document the aftermath." 14/ You can tear your hair out, but it's better to acknowledge the enemy's strengths and do just as well. Our country has both the minds and the hands to outperform the enemy, and I believe that similar footage will soon be published by our units. Novorossiya Militia Reports is much gloomier. Magyar's channel alone publishes videos several times a week of Russian soldiers killed by FPV drones. Each video shows between 50 and 100 dead, and his channel publishes several such videos a week. There are dozens of similar channels belonging to various units of the Ukrainian armed forces' unmanned systems. The current fighting resembles the slaughter of cattle in Siberia, only with people instead of cows. Ukraine is intensifying a quiet but highly effective campaign that is now starting to reshape the battlefield in a fundamental way. Over the past weeks, its unmanned systems forces have focused on one critical objective: dismantling Russia's air defense network piece by piece. Between early and late March, Ukrainian forces destroyed more than 24 Russian air defense systems. Among them were some of the most advanced assets in Moscow's arsenal, including elements of the S-400 Triumph system, as well as multiple Buk M3 and Buk M2 launchers deployed across Bryansk region and occupied parts of Donetsk. These are not just tactical losses, they are strategic degradations of Russia's layered air defense shield. This campaign fits into what is known as DEAD, the destruction of enemy air defenses. Unlike suppression, which temporarily neutralizes systems, this approach aims to physically eliminate them. Ukraine is not just blinding Russian defenses for a moment, it is removing them from the battlefield entirely. The strikes are wide-ranging and coordinated. Ukraine's general staff confirmed a direct hit on a Buk M1 system in Bryansk region, deep inside Russian territory. At the same time, another Buk M2 system was targeted in occupied Zaporizhia. Across Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and even Belgorod region, Ukrainian forces also struck logistics hubs, UAV control centers, and command posts that support these air defense networks. What makes this campaign particularly effective is the method. Ukrainian drones are being used not just for reconnaissance or frontline strikes, but for deep, precision attacks against high-value targets. By combining intelligence, long-range UAVs, and coordinated strikes, Ukraine is systematically hunting down the nodes that make Russian air defense work. President Trump says the United States is negotiating with Iran to end the war now, in its fourth week. Iran denied having talks. Speaking to reporters Monday, Trump laid out U.S. objectives, including Iran halting uranium enrichment for its nuclear program and the U.S. removing the enriched uranium already in the country. If this happens, it's a great start for Iran to build itself back, and it's everything that we want, Trump told reporters on Monday. He said it would also be a great deal for Israel as well as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain.
Happens, I think there's a very good chance we're going to end up in a deal. And so we're giving it 5 days, and then we're going to see where that takes us. And I would say at the end of this period, I think it could very well end up being a very good deal for everybody. As I've directed the Department of War to temporarily postpone planned strikes against major energy and electricity targets in Iran.
But Iran's foreign ministry said there is no dialogue between Tehran and Washington, according to the country's state broadcaster. It said Trump's earlier social media comments touting productive conversations with Tehran were meant to calm energy markets and gain time to carry out his military plans. Major stock indices surged and oil prices dropped after his Truth Social post. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Baghei told his country's state news agency IRNA that messages have been received from some friendly countries regarding a U.S. demand for negotiations to end the war, but he insisted Iran has not entered negotiations. Iran's semi-official Fars news agency reported Monday, citing what it described as informed Iranian sources, that plans are being prepared for potential actions targeting Tel Aviv and some regional allies of the United States and Israel. Special plans are arranged tonight for Tel Aviv and some regional allies of the U.S. and Israel, which will completely remove any hope of negotiation from the minds of the aggressors. A source was quoted as saying by Fars, which is affiliated with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Fars said the threat is in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's claim that the U.S. is engaged in direct talks with Iran, but it did not provide further details about the nature of the alleged plans. According to the same report, Iranian sources also suggested that the situation in the Strait of Hormuz may not return to its pre-war status, even if the conflict eventually ends. The Strait of Hormuz, located between Iran and Oman, is one of the world's most critical maritime choke points, through which roughly 20% of global petroleum liquids consumption passes, making stability in the waterway vital for global energy markets.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.